Hey everyone, I wanted to give you a look at the hardback of the first book in the Midnight Land duology. I already have the first book done, and of course this Kickstarter will be for the entire boxed set, but I wanted to give you a look at what everything should look like. So you can see here the cover of the hardback. You can see it's got some shiny gold, yep, there we go, shiny gold foiling and the lettering. That's on the front, on the spine, and then you see we've got some little, can we get the shine there? Get the shine there. Yeah, little gold shiny things on the back as well. Woohoo! Losing control of it. The cover is full of sort of symbolism, and a lot of thought went into it, and I discussed it a lot with Madison, my artist. So the color scheme is sort of based on popular colors in Russian folk clothing, and you can see that the main character's clothing here is based on fancy sort of medieval Russian folk clothing. At the same time, the color scheme is also influenced by the movie Frozen, because this is also a story of a princess in a far northern land. There are some important characters other than the main character here. Here is, can we focus in on him? Here is a snow hare. That's an important character, recurring character in the book. And here is an Arctic fox. That's also a recurring character in the book. Animals in general are very important in the story. You can also see we've got these flowers here. Although the story takes place mostly in winter, it ends up in spring, and there is this motif of flowers in the snow that comes up repeatedly throughout the story, and this idea of sort of blooming in the snow. And then here we've got this little blurb about how all are born weak, some become strong. That is also a key motif or theme of the story. So you can see how the cover brings together a lot of important things in the story. The Slavic northern setting, animals, flowers, and this idea of finding strength through weakness. And here are some more features of the hardback. You can see it. You can also see my feet. You can see we've got these nice head and tail bands, and then here, you can see my fingers. Here we have a nice shiny ribbon bookmark, which I always love in books myself. Another feature of the hardback and paperback editions are these color maps, and you can see not just the map, but also the place names. All of these place names have meaning in Zemlyan, the language of the world that this is in, which is heavily based on Russian, of course. So for example, the Krasna River is the beautiful river, literally. Krasnograd is the beautiful city. Veliki Prut is large pond, and so on and so forth. So that is the color map. The poet Pushkin is very important, a very sort of important source or allusion for parts of this book. And so here we have an epigraph from his great novel in verse, Eugene Onegin, and you can also see the snowflake graphics for the chapter headings here. And here you can see the first chapter, and each of the chapters start with this chapter heading graphic and also a color drop cap, as you can see here. And just, another thing, since I was just talking about Pushkin, maybe you can find in here the Pushkin allusion. There's an allusion in here to his little tragedy, The Stone Guest. So if you're a Pushkin fan, maybe you can find it in this passage here. Here is one of the color illustrations, and I said that animals are very important in the story, and so you can see here we have horses, and then we have this elk, or as we'd say in North America, a moose. They're basically the same creature. And all of these creatures, again, have important parts in the story. And here we have a color illustration of the Northern Lights. These are some of the main characters looking at the Northern Lights. Of course, the Northern Lights are an important motif in the story about the Midnight Land meaning the Arctic or the far north. So this whole concept of the Arctic or the far north is one might say fundamental, perhaps one of the most fundamental themes of the story, and so we have a nice color illustration of it. Here is another color illustration. Let's see if we can get it in, get the light. And this is my heroine standing in front of the gates to Lesnograd. Lesnograd literally means forest city or forest town, and it's part of this barbaric northern splendor, as they call it, and the deep woods of the far north. The concept for Lesnograd, both in the writing of the book and in the illustration here, was based on the Ethnographic Museum of Taltsi in Irkutsk that I visited many years ago. And it has these square wooden towers and square wooden domes, which you can't really see here, but are described in the story, and then this stockade fencing. So all of this is kind of based on reality, but of course it is a fantasy story. And so that is some of the features of the book. And of course, the second book in the duology and the slipcase will all have the same kind of color illustrations. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to talking to you more about the book during this campaign.